All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to Align's June webinar. The topic is how to unleash the accelerating power of alignment. And our featured speaker is Dave Ramos, the CEO of ShiftPoints. We're really excited to hear about Dave's research and some of the learnings from his new book. And so without further ado, let me turn it over to Dave.
Well, thank you, Henry, and thank you to Align for allowing me to be part of the webinar this morning, and thanks to all the participants. My hope is today will be both extremely interesting to you, extremely valuable, and extremely encouraging. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and thanks again to the Align team. Hey, Henry. It's not letting me advance the screen at the moment, so give me a second. Okay, there we go. So in 2011, Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. And perhaps it would be helpful to all of you if I started with my why. Why is it that I'm so passionate about alignment? Well, back in 1994, I was working for a company called Nortel, and I got promoted to be the VP of Marketing Communications for my division. And I moved to Dallas, and what I discovered is that our division had 34 different marketing and communications agencies. Essentially, every product manager had their own agency. And what that meant is that every product had a different look and feel for their brochures and marketing collateral. And I remember talking to our team, how can we expect our customers to believe that we can build a seamless and integrated network if we can't even get the brochures to fit in the same folder? And this was really my first exposure to the real dramatic costs of misalignment. Then a few years later, Nortel bought Bay Networks, and I moved to Silicon Valley to be part of the integration team. And mergers are always difficult, but this was a veritable disaster, to be honest. We had two of everything. We had two CEOs, two cultures, two product lines, two sales forces, and the integration just never really happened. And $7.9 billion of shareholder value went down the drain. I then moved to Washington, D.C. and joined an artificial intelligence startup called Answer Logic. And Answer Logic, it was a brilliant concept, but the founder and the chief technology officer and the president could never really agree on what business we were in, what product we were building, how to build the product, or really much of anything. And to make matters worse, the board couldn't agree either. And what happened was $11 million worth of venture capital money went down the drain because of a lack of alignment. I then did a consulting project for the Pentagon, and you guessed it, alignment was a huge, huge problem. And then I even went to work at the church I attended, and I'm sorry to say, massive alignment problems there as well. And so what I had is 5 career experiences in a row where we had massive organizational dysfunction caused by misalignment. And so that kicked off really what has been a 10-year research project for me. And over the last little while, we've studied over 300 companies, and I interviewed over 100 CEOs. And I packaged all of my findings into my new book, as Henry mentioned, called Drive One Direction. And I'm here in the Washington, D.C. suburbs still, and the military has an acronym that I like called BLUF. That stands for Bottom Line Up Front. So the bottom line up front for my book is that alignment is the ultimate competitive advantage. And so my hunch is that if you're on this webinar, you probably agree with that conclusion. You're probably trying to be the alignment champion for your company. Many of you are aligned customers, and so you're using the aligned software as part of the toolbox to help you drive alignment and help unleash the accelerating power of alignment for your company and turn alignment into a competitive advantage. And so what I want to do today is share 10 key lessons that came as a result of our research that we did. And so I like to think of this as Alignment 101. First, alignment is just one word, really. But what does it mean? What does alignment mean? Well, one of the things we discovered is that there's no real common definition for alignment. When you study the academic research that people have done about alignment in organizational settings and other white papers and consultants, there wasn't really a standard agreed to definition of what alignment means. So we wrote one, and here's our definition. Alignment is an optimal state where everyone and everything is externally aligned with the market realities, vertically aligned with the corporate priorities, and horizontally aligned to leverage the full resources of the company to win. So let me just unpack this a little bit. When we think of alignment, we think of people and things. That's why we say everyone and everything. And obviously, aligning everyone is a pretty easy to understand concept, but companies have things too. They have products, they have budgets and policies. And so those things also need to be aligned. And then you can see the three dimensions of alignment. External, obviously the markets move very quickly, customer demands change. And so we need companies to be externally focused, externally aligned. And frankly, the term we use is aligned agility. They need to be both aligned and agile. They need to be vertically aligned, which means that things come down from corporate, if you will. If you can bear with me now and use the standard corporate org chart as a picture in your mind, things come down, if you will, from corporate. And so this is what we mean about being vertically aligned. Obviously, things come up too, bottoms up. And so there's this sense of vertical alignment. And then horizontally aligned, so that the divisions are aligned with each other, the departments are aligned with each other, and ultimately to leverage the full resources of the company to win. So I hope you like that definition. We have a little chat window, and feel free to add your comments. I look forward to hearing any comments or suggestions you have about that definition, and I hope it works for you. So the second thing that we concluded was that alignment was mission critical for every company. For every company. We studied a really broad range of companies, you saw on the logo chart. Big companies, small companies, for-profits, nonprofits, you name it. And so that's why we believe that alignment is job one. Perhaps you've recognized already that I use the word one a lot. That's because that's the word that the CEOs use when we talk to them about alignment. It's ultimately the word of alignment. And my wife says I have a one-track mind, so I guess if she says it, it must be true. But alignment's job one was our conclusion. But you might be thinking, is that really true? Is that really true? Because for every idea or every assertion, there are contrarians. So consider Burning Man, that utopian expression of what they call radical self-expression out in the Nevada desert. It was very interesting to me to learn that Burning Man has rules. And in order to be a participant in the festival, you have to agree to stay in alignment with their rules. I found that interesting. Yeah, but how about the anarchists? One of the organizations we studied was the International Association of Anarchists. And believe it or not, if you are going to join the International Association of Anarchists, you have to agree to align with essentially their worldview, their doctrinal statement, if you will, and abide by their bylaws. So I find this fascinating, that even the anarchists need alignment. So it validated our assertion that alignment is mission critical for every company, regardless of their size or their life stage or where they are. The third key insight was that the challenge of alignment has radically changed and become radically more difficult in just one generation. My mom and dad are upstairs. They're listening to the webinar. So hi, Mom and Dad. Hope you're enjoying it so far. But my dad went to work for GE in 1962. He was an aerospace engineer, so I picked up this picture from NASA. And so you think about what the workforce looked like in 1962. Obviously, it was a much more homogeneous crowd, whereas today we have much more diversity in the workforce. And of course, that diversity is a great thing, but candidly, it does make alignment a little bit more difficult. Back then, the vast majority of the people in the workforce had some kind of military experience. Either they themselves were in the military, or maybe their brothers or parents or whatnot. But there was a sense of this idea of the way the military created alignment, which was top-down command and control. And obviously, that just doesn't really work in today's culture. The cultural environment, the demographic trends and whatnot, that top-down command and control, just not really flying anymore. When I went to work at IBM in 1979, IBM and many, many other companies had a culture of lifetime employment. When I went to IBM, I fully expected that I would essentially work there the rest of my life and retire there. And obviously, I don't have to tell you, that's radically changed too. And companies now expect loyalty to their employees, but candidly, they rarely give it. And the average employee might work for 10, 12 companies in their lifetime. And finally, one more point on this is that back then, when my dad went to work, virtually everybody who worked at the company was an employee. And now companies have this eclectic mix of employees and contractors and gig workers. And each of those classes of employees have different rules, different benefits, different pay packages, different compensation, all kinds of other things. And this creates an environment where we have multiple classes of workers, which then, again, makes the alignment process much more difficult. Lesson 4, we came to see that alignment is a complex, multidimensional problem, illustrated here by this picture. The more we got into the alignment issue, the more complicated it became, the more multidimensional it became. And so, again, we came to really fully grasp just how hard it is for companies to create alignment. And so we decided, therefore, that what we needed to develop was a solution that was integrated and comprehensive and simple to implement. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that here today. But alignment is a complex, multidimensional problem. And I know the vast majority of you live this every day, and you're saying amen to that now. Fifth, we came to see that misalignment was the root cause of virtually every organizational dysfunction, and frankly, every interpersonal dysfunction as well. Think about it. If your market strategy is out of alignment, will you target the wrong market opportunities? If sales and marketing are out of alignment, you miss your revenue forecast. If HR's hiring policy is out of alignment, you hire the wrong people. And on it goes. And so we came to see that the root cause of virtually every organizational dysfunction that we studied, we could chase it back to some fundamental misalignment. And ultimately, when the CEO is out of alignment with the board, typically the board gets fired. And so, again, the root cause of misalignment. Sixth, the complexity of creating alignment scales exponentially as your company grows. And so we came to develop this little thing that we call the Alignment Complexity Index. And it's illustrated in this formula here. So think about it. It's based on the number of employees you have, the number of divisions you have. As companies grow, they create divisions. There's only one problem. Divisions, by definition, divide. They also expand geographically and many of them globally. And so the more employees you have, the more divisions you have, the more locations you operate in, the more countries and time zones and currencies and languages you operate in. This scales the alignment challenge exponentially, as illustrated in the graph. So you think about maybe a company with 10 employees in one location, that's pretty easy. You think of a company with 1,000 employees with 3 different divisions in 5 locations in 5 different countries. Well, that's a whole nother ballgame. And so this is why the larger companies tend to struggle with alignment so much more than the smaller companies. The 7th thing we discovered was that there was no common metric used to evaluate a company's alignment. So let me tell you a story. That when we interviewed the CEOs, we always asked them this question. On a 1 to 10 scale, how important is alignment to you and your company? And every CEO would say, oh, it's a 10, it's a 9, it's mission critical. I say, okay. And then I'd say, hey, do you ever hear that old management adage that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it? And every CEO, again, would say the same thing. Oh, I totally believe in that. And then I'd ask them, okay, so you told me that alignment is mission critical. Yep. And you told me if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Yep. And then I'd say, okay, how do you measure alignment? And I got to tell you, at this point, there'd be this long and awkward pause on the phone because virtually no CEO we interviewed had a good answer to the question of how do you measure alignment? So we created one. In the same way, there was no way of no standard definition, no standard metric. So we created one. And here's what it looks like. We call it the corporate alignment percentage. It's a simple 1-question survey, kind of like net promoter. Our vision is perhaps this becomes like the net promoter of alignment. And on a 1 to 100 scale, rate your company's current level of strategic alignment. 1, you're like the picture on the left, warring tribes, civil war is about to break out, or perhaps, we're that perfectly synchronized rowing crew. And in advance of this survey, we sent we sent the survey out to many of you, and thanks for your participation. I want to share with you the results that we're seeing. On average, we're seeing a 64 as the average score for that question. And you can see on the left, the lowest score we received was a 12. You think about that. A 1 says we're warring tribes and the Civil War is about to come out, and we got some people down at a 12, a 20, a 22. And on the far right, you'll see a couple scores of 100, but candidly, the people who gave it that score said, hey, but I'm a 1-person company, I'm a solopreneur, so I better be in alignment. But we were fascinated by the range of results, and frankly, we were a little surprised that they were as low as we see. I thought they'd be higher, but this is what the data is telling us. And so we're going to continue to work on fielding this survey, hopefully partnering with Align to get additional data and report back on what we're finding. A couple other things we have as our core hypothesis behind this. One is that the larger companies score lower than the big companies, kind of driven by the alignment complexity index I just talked about. The second thing that we expect to see, and we're starting to see, we're still crunching the numbers, is that the alignment of the score that the CEO gives is higher than the executive team, which is higher than the middle manager, which is higher than the first line managers, and higher than the individual contributor employees. So our phrase for this is that alignment leaks, and that the further you are away from the CEO's office, the lower the score is going to be. And while I was fascinated by some of the write-in comments, they really, really surprised me. Look at this one. We are siloed from headquarters, and we don't feel part of the strategic direction of the organization. This one, the company is falling apart. This is the person who scored their company a 12. So it's a train wreck, no doubt. Some of my teammates have checked out. And so the classic illustration of alignment is like the perfectly synchronized rowing crew. But imagine the rowing crew with only 7 rowers. Or worse yet, imagine that 1 or 2 or more of the rowers are rowing in the opposite direction. That's essentially what we're seeing. The 8th conclusion was that we had to come up with a way of quantifying the cost of misalignment. And so here's what we developed. The formula goes like this. Think about your total payroll and multiply that by 1 minus your CAP score, and that's the cost of misalignment. So let's show you how that works. Let's just pretend your company has 5,000 associates. And let's just pretend that the average loaded cost of that employee with benefits and everything is 100,000, just to keep our math easy. Okay, and that leads to a $500 million payroll. And if your CAP score is at 90, again, that would put you in the top couple percentile. But even still, the cost of just that level of misalignment is $50 million for this company. They're paying $500 million a year in labor, but they're only getting $450 million worth of value out of that labor because of misalignment. So it became our assertion that improving alignment might very well be the highest return on investment activity that any company could undertake. Elon Musk has an interesting way of talking about this. Every person in your company is a vector, and your alignment is a sum of all vectors. Honestly, when I read that, I went and I signed up for a class from Khan Academy on linear algebra, because frankly, my vector math was a little rusty. But yeah, alignment is the sum of all vectors. I like that one. The ninth conclusion was that while every company has to create alignment, and alignment is mission critical for every company has to do it in a unique, one-of-a-kind way. One of the companies we studied was Cirque du Soleil, obviously a very, very different and fascinating organization. And so our research question for them was, okay, how do you align a bunch of clowns? And it's a fascinating story about essentially their onboarding process to get everybody kind of indoctrinated, if you will, into the Cirque du Soleil way. You might think of it as Circus of the Sun 101. And it's like this 3-month immersion experience that all of their performers go to. But that's a unique thing for Cirque du Soleil. And every company we discovered created alignment in a unique, one-of-a-kind way. 10th, what we discovered was that the one company campaigns delivered amazing results. So for example, Ford, Starbucks, and Microsoft, within the 5-year period after they launched the One Ford campaign or the One Microsoft campaign, for example, the stock price doubled. Amazing, amazing results. And so alignment's mission critical. It produces amazing results, but nobody says it's going to be easy. So take a look at this.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy. Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning right here. And if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories. I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town, you're not one of them. Nowhere else.
EDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
This man right here is my great.
Yeah, well, I hope you like that. That's a commercial that EDS ran in the 2000 Super Bowl called Herding Cats. And it's still widely regarded as one of the best Super Bowl ads ever. And I think if you're in the world of alignment, you can just totally relate to this idea of herding cats. There's another video that I won't play for you, but I wanted to share an excerpt from it. We're going to send you the links to both of these videos in the follow-up for the webinar. But this is from Stuart Butterfield, the CEO of Slack. And I'm guessing that many of you are Slack customers, or perhaps you're familiar with Slack. But he has a video where he actually draws these arrows. And it's very reminiscent of the quote from Elon Musk: every person in your company is a vector, and your alignment is the sum of all vectors. It's the exact same idea. And here's how Stuart summarized it. Ooh, sorry, let me go back. In organizations, people are literally pushing in different directions, making the net effect zero. It's back to the rowing crew, where half of the rowers are going in one direction and half the other direction. And when you can get everyone moving together, it creates greater performance at the organizational level. And listen to this. I think the future of work is going to focus on how to align people. I couldn't agree more, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, and you're out there making it happen. And so I just want to close by saying, again, thank you to all of you. what Align and Shift Points have agreed on is a 3-part series. So the next webinar is actually going to be in July. You can see the date there, and I hope you're able to register for it. And in this next webinar, we're going to go through and unpack what we call the 12 accelerators that you can see in the graphic on the left. And essentially, alignment starts with one team, and we look at the role that the executive team plays in creating alignment. And our summary of that is that a misaligned executive team will never create a highly aligned company. And obviously, it ends in number 12, where you have to go through and take the alignment ideas and the strategy and the vision and the mission and the goals, and you have to connect that all the way to everyone's to-do list. We say it this way: imagine connecting the dots between the corporate strategic plan and everybody's daily to-do list. So again, I want to just thank Align and thank all of you for participating. You can see my contact information there. And at this point, Henry, I'm happy to entertain questions if we want to open it up.
Yeah, for sure. So if people want to submit any questions that they may have, we definitely have time for a couple. There's a Q&A pop-out that you can link to on the bottom of your webinar window. I'll start by asking one. So you mentioned that there's a big disconnect as you go down the ladder between how aligned executives think the company is and how aligned frontline employees think the company is. So I would just be curious, like, what you think is driving that disconnect, and then potentially some strategies for CEOs to actually assess the true organizational alignment.
Yeah, great question. I think there's a few things driving it. One is we really, in the book, one of the things we really want to do is we want to convince people on our core conclusion that alignment's the ultimate competitive advantage. Because if you come to believe that that is true, then creating alignment is not some secondary, tertiary, nice-to-have thing. It's job one. It's the ball game, and there's huge ROI in doing it. And I think some CEOs believe that to be true, and frankly, maybe not all of them have fully bought into that idea and the importance of it. Second of all, you have a little bit with just communications and perhaps the classic illustration of the telephone game, where the message from corporate goes to the divisions and then it goes to the departments, and by the time you hear it, it doesn't sound anything like what came from corporate. And so some of that is just the dynamic of the breadth of the organization, the scale of the organization, cultures, languages, all the other things associated with that. But there's some other things that I think, for example, this is where tools like Align could be extremely helpful, and that has to do with goal alignment. Because again, what we want to do is we want to take the corporate strategic plan and connect that to everybody's to-do list. Now, in the past, there was no efficient way to do that. Certainly no way to do it at scale. There would be the strategic plan, it'd be on a 3-ring binder, and everybody went along their to-do list, and there was no way to connect them. But with a tool like Align, we can make that strategic plan visible to all employees. We can look at how each person's goals connect to everyone else's goals. We can create a culture of goal transparency, where not only can I see the corporate goals, but for example, Henry, I could see yours. And if I can see your goals, and let's just say Henry and I are having a little bit of a disagreement on something, well, look, I can look at his goals, he can look at my goals, and we can sort out, well, no wonder we're disagreeing. Our goals are not aligned, and maybe we can work on that. For example, if Henry was in marketing and I was in sales and our goals don't really align, well, that creates a disincentive for us to do what the company actually wants us to do. And with tools like Align, now that can all have visibility and transparency, and we can manage it. We can actually, for example, with the Align tool, calculate goal alignment. So of the total number of goals in the company, what percentage of them are actually aligned with corporate? And so I think that's why I'm so excited about the Align and the other tools like that, because I think it'll really help change the world. And then communications tools, for example, like Slack or Zoom, like we're using now, really giving organizations new tools that they didn't have, let's say, a decade ago.
Great. Well, there's no other questions, so I think we can wrap things up and people can get back to their days. But Dave, this has been super valuable time. I think we've all really appreciated hearing from you, and we look forward to the future webinars. We'll send out a follow-up email with some summary and certainly your contact information if people would like to get in touch more. When is your book already out, or is it's coming out?
The book is with the publisher, so late July, maybe early August, it'll be out. It's going through that process now, and I'm really looking forward to having it in everybody's hands. I think it'll be a helpful resource for it. Thanks again for everybody for participating.
Great, and thank you.
Bye now.
Have a great day, everyone.
Question.
And yes, we will send out a recording, and people will have access to the slide deck.